It is 1934, and your great-grandmother is standing in a kitchen the size of a closet on Mulberry Street. The windows are fogged from a pot of water she has been boiling for 20 minutes because boiling water costs nothing and it makes the room warm. She has 11 cents, and 4 children sitting at a table with their hands folded. Today, 11 cents will not buy you a single stick of gum. In 1934, in that kitchen, 11 cents bought dinner, and on the counter beside the stove sits a jar of dark, cloudy liquid that looks like it should be thrown away. She is not going to throw it away. You have been told these were poverty meals. Desperate food made by people who had no other option. But that story was rewritten by the same American food industry that spent the next 50 years convincing your family to buy what your great-grandmother already knew how to make from nothing. And that rewriting was not an accident. Number 19 on this list was a dinner built entirely from stale bread and a single egg. And by 1937, it had become so common in Italian neighborhoods that the WPA documented it in a federal nutrition survey. Number 8 involves a dish that the USDA classified as nutritionally incomplete in 1941, but which kept more families alive through the Depression than any government program ever did. And number 2, the one that connects back to that jar of dark liquid on your great-grandmother's counter, was a recipe so simple that it contained exactly 3 ingredients, cost less than 4 cents, and exposed a lie the American grocery industry has been telling your family for 90 years. Hit subscribe now, because by the end of this video, you will have 25 meals your great-grandmother made for pennies that still work tonight, and you will understand exactly why they were taken off your table. Let us count down what your family cooked, what was stolen from your kitchen, and why nobody told you. The jar of dark, cloudy liquid on the counter is the leftover pasta cooking water and vegetable peel broth, brodo di bucce, that Italian grandmothers saved and reused as a base for soups, sauces, and the next night's dinner. It pays off at item number 2, and in the closing, revealing that this waste product was the foundation of an entire cooking system, and that the modern food industry deliberately replaced it with canned broth to create a product where none was needed. Item number 25, aqua cotta, cooked water soup. It is a Wednesday evening in 1933, and the woman in apartment 4A is standing over a pot of water with nothing in it but a few leaves of wild chicory and a crust of bread torn into pieces. This is aqua cotta, cooked water. The ingredients cost less than 2 cents. The bread was already stale. The greens were pulled from a vacant lot on the way home from church. A restaurant in Brooklyn now charges $14 for a bowl of something similar and calls it rustic. She called it Wednesday. Item number 24, polenta with drippings. Cornmeal stirred into boiling water for 40 minutes without stopping. That was the rule. Your grandmother's arm knew the weight of that wooden spoon by the time she was 9. In 1934, a pound of cornmeal cost 4 cents and fed a family of 6. The drippings came from whatever meat had been cooked the Sunday before, scraped from the bottom of an iron skillet. The last woman in my family who made polenta this way stopped in 1987. Her granddaughter uses instant. Item number 23, pasta e ceci. Pasta and chickpeas. At 6 in the evening, in a kitchen on Mott Street, a mother is draining chickpeas she soaked overnight in a tin pail. Broken pieces of pasta go in next, too small to sell at full price. Garlic, a splash of oil from the tin near the stove, and rosemary, if the plant on the fire escape survived the frost. In 1935, this cost 7 cents and fed 4 people until morning. A can of branded chickpea soup now runs $3.89 and has more sodium than a teaspoon of salt. The original had none. Item number 22, minestra di verdura, vegetable soup. Every scrap went into the pot. Potato peels, carrot tops, the outer leaves of cabbage that the grocer on Mott Street threw into a crate by the door. Your great-grandmother collected them without shame, because shame was a luxury nobody could eat. In 1932, this soup cost nothing beyond 3 cents for a small bone from the butcher. She left the wooden spoon in the pot overnight. It kept the flavors moving, she said. Nobody questioned it. Chekhov's Gun Plant 1. The wooden spoon left in the pot overnight. Item number 21. UOVA in Purgatorio. Eggs in Purgatory. 2 eggs cracked into a shallow pan of tomato sauce that had been simmering since noon. The sauce came from a can of tomatoes that cost 5 cents in 1936. The eggs were 2 cents each. For 9 cents, a mother fed herself and 2 children a dinner that was hot and bright red and filling enough to stop the complaints. We now pay $16 for this at a brunch restaurant that serves it with sourdough toast and a side of performance. Item number 20, pasta e patati, pasta and potatoes. Potatoes and pasta cooked in the same water. The starch from both thickened the broth into something that clung to the spoon and sat heavy in the stomach, which was the entire point. In 1934, 10 pounds of potatoes cost 18 cents. A pound of dried pasta cost a nickel. A grandmother in the Bronx could stretch this into 3 dinners for 5 people. The math was simple. The discipline behind it was not. Every dish you have heard so far shares something beyond price. They were all made from ingredients that could not be branded. You cannot trademark a potato. You cannot patent a pot of water with greens in it. In the 1930s, that was unremarkable, but by the 1950s, it became a problem. The American food industry needed consumers to stop doing what these women did, which was feed a family for pennies using skills passed down without a single written recipe. Someone had to convince an entire generation that cooking from scraps was shameful, and someone did. Item number 19. Lenticchie in umido, stewed lentils. Your grandfather ate this 3 nights a week during the winter of 1937. A cup of dried lentils, a clove of garlic, a bay leaf, and enough water to cover everything by 2 inches. He ate it with a torn piece of bread and nothing else. A pound of dried lentils cost 6 cents and made 4 meals. He never called it a recipe. He called it what there was. Item number 18. Frittata di cipolle, onion frittata. It is 6:45 on a Friday, and a father is slicing 2 onions thin, cooking them slowly until they turn sweet and golden. 3 eggs poured over the top, and the pan slid under the broiler of a gas stove that cost $1 to run for the month. In 1935, this dinner cost 8 cents. It was served on the pan it was cooked in because there were not enough plates and not enough time to pretend otherwise. Item number 17. Pancotto, bread soup. Your great-grandmother kept a cloth bag hanging from a nail near the stove. Every bread heel, every dried end, every crust the children left behind went into that bag. When the bag was full, she soaked the bread in boiling water with garlic and oil, and sometimes a beaten egg stirred in at the end. This was pancotto. In 1933, it cost 3 cents if you count the oil. She never counted the bread. It was already paid for. Item number 16, spaghetti aglio e olio, garlic and oil pasta. 5 ingredients: spaghetti, garlic, oil, red pepper flakes, and the water the pasta was boiled in. In 1936, the entire dish cost 6 cents and took 11 minutes from stove to table. It was the meal a father made for himself at 10 o'clock at night after a 12-hour shift when his wife had already gone to bed. It needed to exist and be warm. That was enough. Item number 15, scarola e fagioli, escarole and beans. A head of escarole wilted in a pot with white beans, garlic, and a splash of oil. The escarole cost 3 cents. The beans, soaked overnight, cost another 4. In 1934, this was a complete dinner with enough protein, iron, and bitter greens to satisfy a nutritional profile the USDA would not formally recommend for 60 more years. The women who cooked this never read a chart. They had mothers who told them. Item number 14. Ciabatta, vegetable stew. Whatever was ripe went in. Zucchini, peppers, eggplant, tomatoes, potatoes, onions, all cut rough and slow cooked until they collapsed into each other and stopped being individual vegetables. In the summer of 1936, the ingredients cost 10 cents from a pushcart on Elizabeth Street. The woman who made it measured nothing. She watched the pot and pulled it off the heat when the smell changed. She trusted her hands more than any recipe ever written. Think about what you have seen so far. 14 meals. Not one required a branded ingredient. Not one needed a box, a label, or a marketing department. And that is exactly why they had to go. In 1953, General Foods, Swanson, and Campbell's spent a combined $85 million on television advertising, an amount adjusted for inflation that exceeds $950 million today. The message was the same across every campaign. Cooking from scratch was outdated. Convenience was modern. A 1957 Swanson advertisement showed a smiling mother sliding a foil tray into the oven. The tray cost 98 cents. The lentils cost 6, but the lentils never had a marketing budget. Item number 13. Pasta e fagioli, pasta and beans. The dish your family probably still calls pasta fazool, whether they know how to make it or not. Cannellini beans, ditalini, garlic, tomato, oil. In 1935, the entire pot cost 9 cents and fed 6 people. A Bureau of Labor Statistics survey from that year found that Italian families in New York spent less per person on food than any other immigrant group and reported fewer cases of malnutrition. 9 cents, 6 mouths. The government had no explanation for how they managed it. Item number 12, frittelle di bacala, salt cod fritters. On a Saturday morning in the winter of 1934, a woman on Mulberry Street is pulling salt cod from a bowl of cold water where it has soaked for 2 days. She shreds it, mixes it with flour and parsley, and drops spoonfuls into oil she has saved and reused until it turned dark and smoky. A pound of bacala cost 12 cents. The fritters came out golden and were eaten standing up, straight from the paper they were drained on. Item number 11. Rapini con aglio, broccoli rabe with garlic, bitter greens blanched in salted water and sautéed with sliced garlic until the bitterness softened into something almost sweet. In 1936, a bunch of rapini cost 3 cents from the pushcart. It appeared at nearly every dinner in every tenement on every block. A 2019 report valued the U.S. frozen vegetable market at $9.7 billion. The pushcart is gone. The freezer aisle replaced it. The greens inside the bag taste like the plastic they are wrapped in. Item number 10, pizza di pane, bread dough pizza. When your great-grandmother made bread, she tore off a piece of dough before it went into the oven. She stretched it flat, pressed her fingers into it to make dimples, drizzled oil over the top, and scattered crushed tomato across the surface. This was pizza before pizza was an industry. In 1934, the dough cost nothing because it was already made. The tomato cost 2 cents. By 1970, frozen pizza was a $200 million market. The replacement costs $7.49 and comes in a cardboard box. Item number 9, zuppa di castagne, chestnut soup. In the mountains of Calabria and Campania, chestnuts were ground into flour and cooked into a thick soup with water and a little salt. A woman who carried that knowledge to Mulberry Street found chestnuts selling for 5 cents a pound from a roaster on the corner in the fall of 1933. She boiled them, peeled them, and mashed them into a porridge that tasted faintly sweet and kept children quiet through the night. Chestnut flour now sells for $14 a pound at specialty grocers. The tree is the same. The price tag is not. Item number 8. Pasta al pomodoro crudo, pasta with raw tomato. In August, when tomatoes were so ripe they split if you looked at them too hard, the women on your block crushed them by hand into a bowl with oil, garlic, torn basil, and a pinch of salt. They cooked the pasta, drained it, and tossed it in while it was still hot enough to warm the tomatoes without cooking them. The entire meal cost 7 cents in 1936. The USDA classified it as nutritionally incomplete in 1941. The women who made it every August raised children who outlived the officials who wrote that report. Item number 7. Sessi arrostiti, roasted chickpeas. Dried chickpeas soaked overnight, drained, tossed with oil and salt, and roasted until they cracked and turned golden. Children ate them from a folded piece of newspaper like candy. In 1935, a pound cost 5 cents. A mother made these on Friday afternoons when there was no meat and no money for anything that pretended to be meat. A single serving bag of roasted chickpea snacks now costs $4.29 at Whole Foods. The marketing copy says inspired by ancient Mediterranean tradition. It does not say who it was inspired by or what she was paid. Item number 6, caponata eggplant, celery, capers, olives, tomatoes, vinegar, and a spoon of sugar, all of it slow cooked until the vinegar turned sweet and the eggplant dissolved into something rich and dark. In 1935, the ingredients cost 11 cents in a Sicilian neighborhood in East Harlem. Your grandmother served it cold, on stale bread, as a complete dinner in July, when the kitchen was too hot to light the stove. A jar of pre-made caponata now sells for $9.99 at an Italian specialty shop. 11 cents fed a family for 3 days. The jar barely covers one sitting, and it tastes like vinegar and regret. This went beyond one company. It was an industry. Between 1950 and 1975, the American processed food market grew from $30 billion to over $150 billion. General Mills, Kraft, Campbell's, Swanson, Pillsbury, and General Foods ran coordinated campaigns across television, radio, magazines, and newspapers. Cooking from scratch was backward. Convenience was progress. A 1962 Kraft advertisement told mothers they could feed their family in 8 minutes for 19 cents. What it left out was that their own mothers fed the same family in 40 minutes for 9 cents, and the food was better in every measurable way. And here is the detail that stops me. In 1971, a woman named Concetta Marino recorded an oral history for the Italian-American collection at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. She was 78 years old. She described the moment her granddaughter visited her kitchen, saw the jar of dark water on the counter, the water saved from boiling pasta the night before, and asked why she had not thrown it away. Concetta told the interviewer she went silent. She said she stood there and understood for the first time that everything she knew how to do had already been forgotten by the people she loved most. She died 4 years later. The jar was not on the counter when her family cleaned out the apartment. Item number 5. Papa al pomodoro, bread and tomato soup. It is 1934 and the bread is 3 days old. Your great-grandmother tears it into pieces and drops it into a pot with crushed tomatoes, garlic, oil, and enough water to cover. She cooks it slowly until the bread dissolves and the soup turns thick and red and heavy. This is Papa al pomodoro. It is what you made when the bread was too hard to eat and too valuable to throw away. The ingredients cost 4 cents. An upscale restaurant in Florence now lists this at $18 a bowl and calls it a traditional Tuscan classic. The menu says nothing about the bread being stale or fresh bread being a Sunday luxury. The recipe survived. The truth about where it came from was edited out. Item number 4. Dandelion greens with oil and lemon. In the early spring of 1935, the women in your family walked through Prospect Park in Brooklyn with cloth bags and small knives. They were cutting dandelion greens from the ground, the same greens every other family stepped over or pulled out as weeds. Italian women knew what the leaves were worth. They washed them 3 times to kill the bitterness and cooked them with garlic and a squeeze of lemon. The cost was 0. Andrew Coe, co-author of A Square Meal, documented that Italian immigrants in New York ate more fresh vegetables than any other group during the Depression, and nearly all of them came from vacant lots, parks, and cracks in the sidewalk. The dandelion was free. Knowing what to do with it was the part that cost nothing to pass down and everything to lose. Item number 3. Pan cotto revisited. Remember the cloth bag hanging from the nail near the stove? Every heel, every crust, every dried end the children left behind. That bag was a philosophy. The women who kept it understood something the modern food movement took 80 years to rediscover. Waste is a choice, not a condition. Pan cotto was the proof. Stale bread soaked in broth made from scraps, finished with an egg and a grating of whatever hard cheese remained. In 1933, this cost 3 cents if you are generous with the math. In 2023, the zero-waste cooking movement generated $4.2 billion in cookbook sales and branded product lines. Those women never needed a movement. They needed the nail. Item number 2. Brodo di bucce, broth from vegetable peels. This is the jar on the counter, the dark, cloudy liquid from the beginning of this video. Every peel, every stem, every root end went into a pot of water and simmered for hours. The liquid was strained and saved in a glass jar by the stove. It became the base for tomorrow's soup, the moisture for tomorrow's risotto, the warmth poured over yesterday's bread. In 1934, this broth was free because every ingredient in it had already been used for something else. The wooden spoon stayed in the pot because she believed it pulled the flavor forward. She was right. The starch from the night before thickened the broth by a fraction. She never learned the science. 40 years of cooking taught her the result. In 1952, Swanson introduced canned broth for 15 cents and spent millions telling women it was better than what they already made for free. Item number 1. Pasta e fagioli della nonna, grandmother's pasta and beans. It is 1934, and your great-grandmother is standing in a kitchen on Mulberry Street. She is making pasta e fagioli. Not the version from a restaurant menu. Not the version from a can with a smiling chef on the label. The version where the beans were soaked since yesterday and the pasta was broken pieces from the bottom of the box because the whole pieces were saved for Sunday. The version where the broth came from the jar on the counter, from the peels and the stems and the bones and the water that had already been used once and would be used again. This pot cost 8 cents. It fed 6 people. It contained more protein than a Swanson TV dinner, more fiber than a bowl of Campbell's minestrone, and more iron than a $22 grain bowl from a fast casual restaurant that opened last year and will close before this video reaches 1 million views. This was not poverty food. This was a system of knowledge so complete that it required no recipe, no measurement, no book, and no brand. It required a woman who learned from her mother, who learned from hers. And when that woman died, and no one had written it down, and no one had asked her to teach them, the system did not vanish. It was replaced, on purpose, by people who profited from your family forgetting how to do what she did for 8 cents. That is not a recipe that disappeared, that is a recipe that was taken. The jar on the counter, the dark cloudy liquid your great-grandmother never threw away. Brodo di bucce. Broth made from peels and scraps and stems that every other family in the building put in the garbage. She kept it because her mother kept it. Her mother kept it because in a village in Campania or Calabria or Sicily, throwing away food that could still feed someone was sin. These were never poverty meals. That word was assigned later by an industry that needed your family to feel ashamed of what it knew how to do, so it could sell you an inferior replacement at 40 times the cost. Your great-grandmother fed 6 people for 8 cents with knowledge that was free, ingredients that were nearly free, and a system so sophisticated that no corporation has ever replicated it. They never tried. They just made sure you forgot. I made pasta e fagioli last month, the real version. Soaked beans, broken pasta, broth from scraps. I sat at the table alone and thought about my grandmother trying to teach me this once 20 years ago and how I told her I was busy. She is gone now. The recipe she carried in her hands died with her. I learned it from a stranger on the internet. Make the aglio e olio this week. Garlic, oil, pasta, salt, pepper flakes. 11 minutes. Ask someone in your family before you look it up, if there is still someone to ask. Tell me in the comments, did your family make anything on this list? And if they did anyone teach you how? Or did you have to learn it the way I did? Too late, from someone who never knew her.